Ladies and gentlemen, as we speak, the theater of war is southern Lebanon, where the Hezbollah and Israel both are clashing. Israel has moved both additional ground troops and airplanes in what is a clear indication that its limited land raids in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, are not limited anymore. Now, yesterday's unprecedented and risky retaliation by Iran, firing some 200 missiles into Israel, has many people asking whether this is the beginning of World War III. I will be putting that question to my two distinguished guests this evening. But before I do that, let me bring you up to speed with all the big developments today. First things first, Iran has said it has finished with its missile attacks on Israel, but has also said in the same breath that it is ready if Israel retaliates. Israel is threatening exactly that, saying Iran will have to pay.
איראן עשתה הערב טעות גדולה, והיא תשלם על כך. המשטר באיראן לא מבין את נחישותנו להגן על עצמנו, ואת נחישותנו לגמול לאויבינו.
Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel. At my direction, the United States military actively supported the defense of Israel, and we're still assessing the impact. But based on what we know now, the attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. And this is testament to Israeli military capability and U.S. military. It's also a testament to intensive planning between the United States and Israel to anticipate and defend against the brazen attack we expected.
کشورهای اروپایی، آمریکا باید این جانی رو سر جاش بنشونم که دست از این کاراش برداره، چون اگه بخواد ادامه بده به این سادگی نی. دفعه دیگه اگه بخواد کاری بکنه که امنیت ما رو به هم بزنه، ما هم امنیت اونا رو قادریم به هم بزنیم و قطعا اگر اونا بخوان کاری خلاف اون مسائل رو انجام بدن، پاسخهای بسیار محکمتر از اینی رو خواهند گرفت که دیشب نشون داده شد.
Meanwhile, the extent of damage in Israel after Iran's attack last night is not absolutely clear, because while Iran says it struck only military bases in Israel and avoided striking civilians, they're also saying that their Fatah supersonic missiles hit the targets inside Israel, which is essentially 3 military bases. Israel, on the other hand, is claiming that 90% of the missiles were intercepted before they could do any damage inside the country. Ladies and gentlemen, this is called the fog of war. Truth usually is the first casualty of war. Meanwhile, the US, France, and Britain have all joined the war on Israel's behalf, as was expected. The US has sent in additional troops and warplanes to the Middle East. Now, the other big development, ladies and gentlemen, is Israel's war against the United Nations Secretary General is escalating as well. Israel has now banned the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, from entering the country. In fact, Israel has declared him persona non grata for failing to condemn Iran's actions on Israel. There are multiple questions this evening, ladies and gentlemen. What is the endgame in the Middle East? Why is Israel not interested in peace at the moment? Just how bad will it get in the Middle East before it gets better? And will Israel strike at Iran's nuclear assets? I'm putting those questions to my guests this evening. No one knows the Middle East and its centuries-old conflict better than the two of them. General Atta Hasnain and Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad are joining me on the show. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. General Atta Hasnain joining us on the broadcast, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad joining me in the studio on the show. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. General Hasnain, let me start with you. Can I ask you whether we should have expected Iran's retaliation last night?
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on your program this evening. Along with Ambassador Talmiz, I think he's one of the finest minds on West Asia today. So it's great joining him on this program. As to your question, should we have expected an Iranian reprisal? I would say the history of the last 2 years of this conflict shows that Iran is a reluctant fighter. It attempts to project that it is a serious fighter. We also know that it has certain limitations of its capabilities. Over a period of time, it has lost leaders, commanders, has only done lip service to response. So as such, to say that there would be an immediate response and an effective response may not have entirely been a correct assessment. A response would definitely be there because Iran cannot see itself in the eyes of other Arab countries, others around the Middle East, as having made no response to the kind of provocation which Israel has done in Lebanon, particularly after the killing of Hassan Nasrallah. Hassan Nasrallah was an important proxy, and Iran's entire military doctrine is based on proxy warfare. So if Iran did not respond, obviously it would not be very good for the reputation, for the military reputation of Iran by itself.
Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, how do you look at Iran's response to what Iran says is Israel's provocation? After all, it's not just what has happened to its proxies. The fact is there have been assassinations on Iranian soil as well of Hamas leaders.
Absolutely right. Iran has been consciously and deliberately provoked by Israel over several months. But as recently as April, 4 of their generals were killed when their embassy was targeted.
Correct.
After that, Haniyeh was killed in Tehran itself. He is a political figure, not a military person. And then we have the killing of Nasrallah. Systematic provocations. There is no way Iran could have remained silent. What Iran has done is quite remarkable. Very calculated, very restrained, more a demonstration of capacity rather than an assault on a civilian, on the civilians in Israel. They have demonstrated that they have even more lethal weaponry available to them, but they were able to penetrate the Iron Dome in several places.
Or at least
They were able to inflict a degree of damage. I don't think they were targeting on a mass scale the way Israel has done. When Israel has attacked both in Gaza and in Lebanon, they have never bothered about civilian casualties at all. And they have triumphantly stated, we killed so-and-so and killed so-and-so, without mentioning that they have actually killed 1,000 people in Lebanon and 42,000 people in Gaza. Iran has not done that. So what they have done is a demonstration of capacity. It is a warning to the international community that they should now intervene and restrain Israel from any further war effort.
But let's just get in the UN in that case here. The UN is supposed to meet today, or at least so they say, that France has convened a meeting of the United Nations to see what can be done to de-escalate the situation in the Middle East, Ambassador. I want to ask you, isn't the purpose of the UN to anticipate such conflicts and try and stop them before they happen? In this case, are you seeing a complete failure of the United Nations? Because Israel is saying, we are banning Antonio Guterres, and they've had a long-running feud with him. This guy is a persona non grata because he has failed to condemn Iran's actions in Israel. This is not a guy we want to do business with.
What you have today is Israel that has gone rogue and its prime minister who has gone rogue.
Why do you say that? If
Because
it had gone
they
rogue,
do
would the
not
United
apply
States,
any
Britain...
norms or rules in terms of their actions. That is why you call them rogue.
But rogue is someone who is operating on their own, sir.
They are operating,
right?
yeah. Well,
but here you have the United States that has joined them, the French have joined them, the British have joined them.
You are absolutely right to mention this. As far as I can see, Israel's actions make it a rogue state. And its prime minister's self-absorbed capacity for violence makes him a rogue persona as well. The United States has been a very curious figure in this. From day one, they have been constantly supplying weaponry to the Israelis, crucial weaponry as far as their capacities are concerned. Without this, there could not have been the carnage that we have seen. And yet, their president has spoken about a two-state solution. He has supported a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire. He himself has announced a ceasefire. He has also pushed a truce of 21 days. And it is quite bewildering that Israel has publicly snubbed him and made it clear that he carries no impact whatsoever as far as their actions are concerned. And the Americans have bowed down before him and got on business as usual. I think the warnings were very clear. When the Israelis attacked the Iranian embassy, at that time, the Americans should have really been tough and firm and made it clear to Netanyahu that he has crossed a red line and that they will see a region facing major conflict.
But General Hasnain, just come in here. The escalation in conflict in the Middle East right now is even serving a purpose for the United States of America. The fact is that Iran, all of us know, have nuclear assets. Just how many, no one is clear of. The United States of America has had some concerns about them. Is this the opportunity they are looking at, the perfect time then, to deal with it, as it were?
If there is any truth in what you are saying, Shreya, I think it would be a very sad commentary because they don't know what kind of an escalation this will bring up. While agreeing largely with what Ambassador Talmiz has said, let me take a more centric line to say that actually we are living in a world which is very, very different, evolving in very, very unpredictable ways. With what is happening in Gaza and the rogue status of Israel as we are labeling it, there is also the same thing happening in Ukraine where you have the Russians on the other side doing something similar. Also, we could argue that the Ukrainians themselves are perhaps involved in it. So, labeling any side at the moment may be not entirely correct. But to that extent, I would say the United States is playing a very, very awkward game. And the fact that the US presidential elections are on at this time is facilitating this entire gray zone in international politics, which is what is being exploited entirely by Israel.
What about how do you see the role of the United Nations? Hasn't their role been bewildering as well, as you put it?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The United Nations is at the moment virtually paralyzed. There's no one listening to it at all in any major conflict. And this has been on for quite some time. Where did we see the last time that the United Nations intervention in any way made a difference to a major conflict in the world? Hardly anything anywhere. So to that extent, definitely the manner in which the Israelis are cocking a snook at the United Nations, not bothering at all about what President Biden is advising from time to time, it almost is as if they are a power unto themselves in this world. There's no doubt about it. But this is not alone. We can't label this alone on Israel. Lots and lots of nations around the world are doing this at the moment. And that is what is the awkward thing. This is what is leading to far more concerns about international peace today.
Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, you called Israel, or rather Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, a rogue character. My point to you is, many people who are watching this broadcast, and Indians by and large do support Israel and the Israelis.
That is not certain at all.
Well, the Indian
We
government...
don't know about that.
We can have a difference of opinion on that. But Ambassador, my question to you is this. What is a Prime Minister supposed to do? On October 7th, the Hamas enters Israeli territory and kills women and children and men sleeping in their bed, takes hostages, refuses to release them, sexually assaults women who have been taken as hostages. What is a Prime Minister supposed to do, if not go, quote-unquote,
The Israeli
rogue?
side has given this narrative which you just...
But we saw the pictures.
It has got very little evidence so far in public particularly about sexual assault, that has itself been rebuked and now refuted. But do recall, October 7th is not the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story is much earlier. And even if you don't go back too far, but you certainly know that there have been attacks in Gaza from in the year 2000, in the year 2006, you've had Israeli troops entering Gaza at will and killing several hundred people at any time, at will. There were, even in 2019, you had a peaceful demonstration, a Gandhian demonstration, where people were talking about the right to land. No weapons, no stones. Israeli snipers took out 200 of them by shooting them in the head. So let us agree that there is a very complex scenario. It has divided people, claiming the same heritage, the same land, the same territory. They are, of course, united by their shared belief in the prophets, but they are divided today very deeply into Arab and Israeli. And that is the case today. What you have in Israel and why the scenario has become so complex is because in the case of Israel, you have an extreme right-wing government that has systematically and deliberately provoked the Palestinians by taking out massive violence against the people in West Bank. From the time the new government came in December 2022, more than 600 or 700 people were killed by settlers. Then you had the desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So a climate had been created where the people were getting angry, and all of us knew that this is going to explode. 7th October itself is a consequence of many of these things that have happened. Therefore, let us say that, yes, what all happened on that day is fine. But then mass murder on the scale that you have seen, 42,000 people dead, 70% of them women and children, without caring for any human life. And how many are those great leaders they have killed? They are still searching for the commander after 1 year. And they have said they are going to annihilate Hamas. They are seeking to annihilate the Palestinian people on the same lines that the Jewish community suffered under Nazism in the shape of the final solution. Exactly that is happening today at the hands of Israel to the Palestinian people.
General Hasnain, would you agree with that analysis? Would you agree that to a large extent, as the ambassador is saying, according to him, it's Israel to blame, it's Israel at fault? The fact is that for years and years and years, look at what Iran has done. Fund proxies that constantly target Israel and Israelis.
See, Shreya, I think you're simplifying this whole conflict a little too much. In a half-an-hour program to start labeling black and white who is to blame, who is wrong and who is right, in a conflict which stretches back 150 years and more, is, I think, a very unfair thing. 7th of October happened due to a sequence of events, as exactly what Ambassador Talmiz has just said. No one can justify what happened on 7th of October. 1,200 lives lost, over 250 people taken hostage, and thereafter a doctrine followed by Israel of hunting for the last Hamas terrorists by pounding Gaza without bothering about the collateral. Who can ever accept this in the world? No one can accept it. No one can accept the action which was carried out by Hamas on 7th of October, and no one in his senses can accept anything which the Israelis have done in response. Let's agree, you and I and all of us who are part of humanity, who understand the aspects of humanity, that both sides are to blame and that the world needs to come together to put an end to this. The unfortunate thing is the United States, which claims to be the policeman of the world, has failed miserably in doing its duties. And that is the unfortunate thing in this entire case.
So can I ask you what the end game for Israel here is? What exactly are they trying to do? Are they trying to kill the last Hamas leader and member and the last Hezbollah leader and member? Because history is teaching us to be skeptical. History is telling us that, you know, you try and eliminate them, they'll come back again.
That is exactly the thing. You're absolutely 100% right. You see, of all people, of all nations, Israel, which understands terrorism, counterterrorism better than any other nation in the world, for them to try and do this under the leadership of its current prime minister, I think is something which is an anathema at the moment. To think that they can hunt down the last terrorist and that there will be no response. I can assure you this conflict has been extended by another 50 years of what is happening at the moment. We are not going to see the end of this conflict. There's no end game here. If you discuss Kashmir with me, Shreya, we can always talk about an end game. We can talk about a conflict termination. In this particular case, there is no question of discussing anything called conflict termination and conflict resolution.
I'll give you the last word, Ambassador. Will it get worse before it gets better? Because Israel is saying, you made a mistake, you'll have to pay for it. Iran is saying, for the moment, we are done with the missile strikes. But if you target us again, we will retaliate. So this, though, is a zero-sum game then.
For Prime Minister Netanyahu, this conflict has become a personalized matter. It is not a matter for the country or for its strategic interests. He is saving his skin and seeking his political survival on the basis of the mass murder that is taking place today in Gaza as well as in Lebanon. And now he wants to crown that with a massive assault upon Iran. I would imagine there have been many opportunities. Yes, you rightly raised the issue of 7th October. But since then, there have been several initiatives as far as ceasefire is concerned, even from the Americans. Even, Blinken has been there several times. Very detailed proposals have been put forward. That means the conviction in the United States and large parts of the international community was that you have avenged the events of 7th October adequately. Let's move on now. So the opportunities for peace have been there on the table. But Netanyahu has rejected them because they were not good enough. The reason he is targeting all these people is effectively telling the Israeli people that I failed you on 7th October, forgive me, I have now taken out all these enemies of Israel and therefore I need your mandate once again. The business about Iran is something troubling and worrying, because he is projecting that to his own people, but more importantly to the Americans, that here is a golden opportunity for regime change. This is something that the Western world, particularly the Americans, have desperately wanted for all these decades.
When you say regime change, what do you mean?
That is what has come out in the media, and sections of the Indian media are referring to that. They believe that he can carry out such a massive assault on Iran that it will be a broken state, and finally, as part of the repair effort, you will have a regime that you want, regime in your own image, something like what the Americans achieved in Japan and Germany at the end of the Second World War. I don't think that is acceptable at all. I think the international community has tolerated this Prime Minister for so long that I think the time has come to put a halt to that. This is where the Americans should really have stepped in. It's too late. I know it's very late.
They have stepped in on his behalf.
I can't.
So have the French, sir, and so have the British.
All the Europeans don't count. They are part of a very broad Western alliance. They have no strategic value.
Okay.
As you know, Israel has abused the European Union's foreign policy chief. Abused him, called him anti-Semitic. So anyone who says anything that Netanyahu doesn't like or Israel doesn't like becomes anti-Semitic.
Okay, we'll leave it there. This is not the last conversation. I'm certainly sure this is not the last conversation we are having. My fear is that we will see an escalation. It's not stopping here. We all can hope that it doesn't happen, but probably that's the way it will go. Ambassador, thank you very much. Thank you very much, General Hasnain, for joining us as well.
Thank you.
It was good to have the two of you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.